in loco parentis for Attorney General, when it comes to this?
In the modern age, it's become understood, and courts are actually enforcing the law in this way, that long, dense, fine print is not a substitute for full disclosure of the key terms up front in a face-to-face confrontation. And we have face-to-face confrontations on this campus happening all the time. So that's why we have the Consumer Sales Practices Act. That's why its provisions are there. The Attorney General is the lone official in the state who can enforce that law. And it's important that it be enforced tough and in a consistent way. That's something I will do as Attorney General.
And if I can just jump in here also, I mean, like when you wade through pages and pages of like a derivative or something like that in a math textbook, the answer is always at the end. And in the fine print, like it'll usually say there's like a little star and it says way down at the bottom, you may not qualify for 0%. But trying to get someone to tell you what your starting percentage is close to impossible. Like having a conversation, they're like, well, maybe this one, maybe that. Well, why not? And you have to start filling out the whole application before you even know what your numbers are going to be at the end.
Well, we found that with our Speak Out campaign. That was one of the things a lot of people complained about, and one of the things those rules addressed was offers for credit cards that headlined with a big low teaser interest rate. And then people would fill out the application and not even realize until they had the card, and maybe not even until they started getting a bill, that they hadn't actually qualified for that rate, but they filled out the card application and so they'd gotten the card. So the premise on which they thought they'd gotten the card wasn't fulfilled from the outset. So there is a lot of bait and switch. And the other thing is you can have a low teaser rate and then it can jump up for any reason or no reason. The card companies have a lot of discretion over that, and that can happen in the first month or the third month before you really even settled into a pattern of paying that bill.
Is there litigation still pending from Mark Dan on this subject? And if there is, what would happen to that?
I'm not sure what litigation is pending in that office. That's confidential matter for them in terms of where they're pursuing litigation. I know there were at least a couple of settlements last year where they were beginning to try to police this on a couple of the campuses, and I think that that's appropriate.
Your opponent is critical of the idea of suing the university. He basically, or his press person, basically characterizes it as suing yourself or suing your own client.
That's not what we're talking about at all. It just completely misunderstands the issue. The target here are marketers who are engaged in fraudulent, misleading practices. That's what the Attorney General can police with his own consumer protection, his or her own consumer protection power. What we're talking about in addition to that is legislation and the legislative process and discussions with the Board of Trustees to consider the marketing practices on campus and trying to get to more reasonable rules of the road as to how we treat our students and how we work with these companies on the college campuses. Nobody's talking about suing the university, though.
Would you take that off the table as an option?
I don't see the reason that we would do that. I think we'll have discussions with them, and there's a legislative process that's already being initiated to apply some pressure, and I think that we can get to reasonable resolutions that way.